Hi team, and welcome back for another speedy read of Phillip Pullman's Northern Lights. Now, if you don't know already, the crack is this: we've got 15 minutes to get through as much as possible. And just last time we were learning a bit more about Lyra's Oxford. So, let's continue. Without further ado, I'm going to start reading in my best reading manner. Alright? 15 minutes, starting from now, speedy read, off we go. That was Lyra's world, and her delight. She was a coarse and greedy little savage for the most part, but she always had a dim sense that it wasn't her whole world. That part of her also belonged in the grandeur and ritual of Jordan College, and that somewhere in her life there was a connection with the high world of politics represented by Lord Asriel. All she did with that knowledge was to give herself airs and lord it over the other urchins. It had never occurred to her to find out more. So she had passed her childhood like a half-wildcat. The only variation in her days came on those irregular occasions when Lord Asriel visited the college. A rich and powerful uncle was all very well to boast about, but the price of boasting was having to be caught by the most agile scholar and brought to the housekeeper to be washed and dressed in a clean frock, following which she was escorted, with many threats, to the senior common room to have tea with Lord Asriel. A group of senior scholars would be invited as well. Laura would slump mutinously in an armchair until the master told her sharply to sit up, and then she'd glower at them all till the chaplain laughed. What happened on those awkward formal visits never varied. After the tea, the master and the other few scholars who'd been invited left Lyra and her uncle together, and he called her to stand in front of him and tell him what she had learnt since his last visit. And she would mutter whatever she could dredge up about geometry, or Arabic, or history, or anbarology, and he would sit back with one ankle resting on the other knee and watch her inscrutably until her words failed. Last year, before his expedition to the north, he'd gone on to say, "And how do you spend your time when you're not diligently studying?" And she mumbled, "I just play. Sort of around the college, just play, really." And he said, "Let me see your hands, child." She held out her hands for inspection, and he took them and turned them over to look at her fingernails. Beside him, his demon lay sphinx-like on the carpet, swishing her tail occasionally and gazing unblinkingly at Lyra. "Dirty," said Lord Asriel, pushing her hands away. "Don't they make you wash in this place?" "Yes," she said, "but the chaplain's fingernails are always dirty. They're even dirtier than mine." "Oh, he's a learned man. What's your excuse?" "I must have got them dirty after I washed." "Where do you play to get so dirty?" She looked at him suspiciously. She had the feeling that being on the roof was forbidden, though no one had actually said so. "In some of the old rooms," she said finally. "And where else?" "In the clay beds sometimes. And Jericho and Port Meadow." "Nowhere else?" "No. You're a liar. I saw you on the roof only yesterday." She bit her lip and said nothing. He was watching her sardonically. "So you play on the roof as well?" he went on. "Do you ever go into the library?" "No. I found a rook I found a rook on the library roof, though," she went on. "Did you? Did you catch it?" "It had a hurt foot. I was going to kill it and roast it, but Roger said we should help it get better. So we gave it scraps of food and some wine, and then it got better and flew away." "Who's Roger?" "My friend, the kitchen boy." "I see. So, you've been all over the roof." "Not all over. You can't get onto the Sheldon building because you have to jump up from Pilgrim's Tower across a gap. There's a skylight that opens onto it, but I'm not tall enough to reach it." "You've been all over the roof except the Sheldon building. What about underground?" "Underground? There's as much college below ground as there is above it. I'm surprised you haven't found that out." "Well, I'm going in a minute. You look healthy enough." "You look healthy enough. Here." He fished in his pocket and drew out a handful of coins, from which he gave her $5 gold. "Haven't they taught you to say thank you?" he said. "Thank you," she mumbled. "Do you obey the master?" "Oh, yes." "And respect the scholars?" "Yes." Lord Asriel's demon laughed softly. It was the first sound she had made, and Lyra blushed. "Go and play then," said Lord Asriel. Lyra turned and darted to the door with relief, remembering to turn and blurt out a goodbye. So, Lyra's life had been, before the day, so Lyra's life had been, before the day when she decided to hide in the retiring room and first heard about dust. And of course, the librarian was wrong in saying to the master that she wouldn't have been interested. She would have listened eagerly now to anyone who could tell her about dust. She was to hear a great deal more about it in the months to come, and eventually she would know more about dust than anyone in the world. But in the meantime, there was all the rich life of Jordan still being lived around her. And in any case, there was something else to think about. A rumour had been filtering through the streets for some weeks, a rumour that made some people laugh and others grow silent, as some people scoff at ghosts and others fear them. For no reason that anyone could imagine, children were beginning to disappear. It would happen like this. East, along the great highway of the River Isis, thronged with slow-moving brick barges and asphalt boats and corn tankers, way down past Henley and Maidenhead to Teddington, where the tide from the German Oceans reaches, and further down still to Mortlake, past the house of the great magician Dr. D, past Faulks, where the pleasure gardens spread out bright with fountains and banners by day, with tree lamps and fireworks by night, past Whitehall Palace, where the king holds his weekly council of state, past the shot tower, dropping its endless drizzle of molten lead into the vats of murky water, further down still, to where the river, wide and filthy now, swings in a great curve to the south. This is Limehouse, and here is the child who is going to disappear. He is called Tony Macarios. His mother thinks he's 9 years old, but she has a poor memory that the drink has rotted. She thinks he's 9 years old, but she has a poor memory that the drink has rotted. He might be 8 or 10. His surname is Greek, but, like his age, that is a guess on his mother's part, because he looks more Chinese than Greek. And there's Irish and Skraeling and Lascar in him from his mother's side too. Tony's not very bright, but he has a sort of clumsy tenderness that sometimes prompts him to give his mother a rough hug and plant a sticky kiss on her cheeks. The poor woman is usually too fuddled to start such a procedure herself, but she responds warmly enough once she realises what's happening. At the moment, Tony is hanging about in the market in a pie street. He's hungry, it's early evening, and he won't get fed at home. He's got a shilling in his pocket that a soldier gave him for taking a message to his best girl. But Tony's not going to waste that on food, when you can pick up so much for nothing. So, he wanders through the market, between the old clothes stalls and the fortune paper stalls, the fruit mongers and the fried fish seller, with his little demon on his shoulder, a sparrow, watching this way and that, and when a stallholder and her demon are both looking elsewhere, a brisk chirp sounds, and Tony's hand shoots out and returns to his loose shirt with an apple or a couple of nuts, and finally with a hot pie. The stallholder sees that and shouts, and her cat demon leaps, but Tony's sparrow is aloft, and Tony himself halfway down the street already. Curses and abuse go with him, but not far. He stops running at the steps of St. Catherine's Oratory, where he sits down and takes out his steaming, battered prize, leaving a trail of gravy on his shirt. And he's being watched. A lady in a long yellow-red fox fur coat, a beautiful young lady whose fair hair falls shining delicately under the shadow of her fur-lined hood, is standing in the doorway of the oratory, half a dozen steps above him. It might be that a service is finishing, for the light comes on from the doorway behind her. An organ is playing inside, and the lady is holding a jewelled breviary. I'm not sure what that is. I'll have to find out. Tony knows nothing of this, his face contentedly deep in the pie. His toes curled inwards, and his bare soles together, he sits and chews and swallows, while his demon becomes a mouse and grooms her whiskers. The young lady's demon is moving out from beside the fox fur coat. He is in the form of a monkey, but no ordinary monkey. His fur is long and silky, and of the most deep and lustrous gold. With sinuous movements, he inches down the steps toward the boy and sits a step above him. Then the mouse senses something and becomes a sparrow again, cocking her head a fraction sideways and hops along the stone a step or two. The monkey watches the sparrow watches the monkey. The monkey reaches out slowly. His little hand is black, his nails perfect horny claws, his movements gentle and inviting. The sparrow can't resist. She hops further, and then, with a little flutter, up onto the monkey's hand. The monkey lifts her up and gazes closely at her before standing and swinging back to his human, taking the sparrow demon with him. The lady bends her scented head to whisper, and then Tony turns. He can't help it. "Ratter," he says, half in alarm, his mouth full. The sparrow chirps. It must be safe. Tony swallows his mouthful and stares. "Hello," said the beautiful lady. "What's your name?" "Tony." "Where do you live, Tony?" "Clarice Walk." "What's in that pie?" "Beefsteak." "Do you like chocolates?" "Chocolatal." "Chocolatal." I guess it must be chocolate. "Yeah," he says. "As it happens, I've got more chocolate. Chocolatal. It just doesn't make sense to me. But it does in this world, so I will persevere. And this is a lovely scene. So, as it happens, I've got more chocolatal than I can drink myself. Will you come and help me drink it?" He's lost already. He was lost the moment his slow-witted demon hopped onto the monkey's hand. He follows the beautiful young lady and the golden monkey down Denmark Street and along to Hangman's Wharf, and down King George's steps to a little green door in the side of a tall warehouse. She knocks. The door is opened. They go in. The door is closed. Tony will never come out, at least by that entrance, and he'll never see his mother again. She, poor drunken thing, will think he's run away, and when she remembers him, she'll think it was her fault and sob her sorry heart out. Little Tony Macarius wasn't the only child to be caught by the lady with the golden monkey. He found a dozen others in the cellar of the warehouse, boys and girls, none older than 12 or so, though since all of them had histories like his, none could be sure of their age. What Tony didn't notice, of course, was the factor that they all had in common. None of the children in that warm and steamy cellar had reached the age of puberty. The kind lady saw him settled on a bench against the wall, and provided by a silent serving woman with a mug of chocolatal from the saucepan on the iron stove. Tony ate the rest of his pie and drank the sweet hot liquor without taking too much notice of his surroundings, and the surroundings took little notice of him. He was too small to be a threat, and too stolid to promise much satisfaction as a victim. It was another boy who asked the obvious question. "Hey lady, what you got us all here for?" He was a tough-looking wretch with dark chocolatal on his top lip and a gaunt black rat for a demon. The lady was standing near the door, talking to a stout man with the air of a sea captain, and as she turned to answer, she looked so angelic in the hissing naphtha light that all the children fell silent. "We want your help," she said. "You don't mind helping us, do you?" No one could say a word. They all gazed suddenly shy. They had never seen a lady like this. She was so gracious and sweet and kind that they felt they hardly deserved their good luck. And whatever she asked, they'd give it gladly so as to stay in her presence a little longer. She told them that they were going on a voyage. They would be well fed and warmly clothed, and those who wanted to could send messages back to their families to let them know that they were safe. Captain Magnusson would take them on board his ship very soon, and then, when the tide was right, they'd sail out to sea and set a course for the north. Soon, those few who did want to send a message to whatever home they had were sitting around the beautiful lady as she wrote a few lines at their dictation and, having let them scratch a clumsy X at the foot of the page, folded it into a scented envelope and wrote the address they told her. Tony would have liked to have sent something to his mother, but he had a realistic idea of her ability to read it. He plucked at the lady's fox fur sleeve and whispered that he'd like to tell his mum where he was going, and to tell his mum where he was going and all, and she bent her gracious head close enough to his moulderous little body to hear, and stroked his head and promised to pass the message on. Then the children clustered around to say goodbye. The golden monkey stroked all their demons, and they all touched the fox fur for luck, or as if they were drawing some strength or hope or goodness out of the lady. And she bade them all farewell, and saw them in the care of the bold captain on board a steam launch at the jetty. The sky was dark now. We're almost there. The sky was dark now, the river a mass of bobbing lights. The lady stood on the jetty and waved till she could see their faces no more. Then she turned back inside with the golden monkey nestled in her breast, and threw the little bundle of letters into the furnace before leaving the way she had came. Right, that's me. Ooh, the plot thickens. Poor little Tony, I wonder where they're going. But join me next time and we'll find out a little bit more, alright? As for me, I'm so out of here. Bye!
Stand up and fight, for you know we are right. We must strike at the lies that all spread like disease through our